coming off the Super Bowl '99 commercial and a record-breaking audience for halftime heat, momentum was high going into February 1st. Both companies had similar angles planned for tonight, with Hogan and McMahon on location, going after Steve Austin and David Flair in Texas and Charlotte. WCW's Unopposed Hour was built on the NWO Black and White conflict with the Wolfpack, arriving at the Minneapolis airport with no rental cars left for them to drive to the arena, while the Wolfpack were in their limousines. With the group on the way, Vincent, who was the Wolfpack's undercover member to report on the Black and White crew, called Nash and got in their limousine on the way to the Target Center. In the other main angle, President Ric Flair put Eric Bischoff outside the building in a dunk tank, saying that throughout the night every employee who was mistreated by Eric over the years is gonna come out and throw the balls to get Eric in the water on a cold night in Minneapolis, Minnesota. Flair came out for a promo with Gene a few minutes later, hyping the upcoming match with Hogan at Super Brawl, saying that Hogan is not going to be there tonight. Flair continued to Bret Hart, saying that he calls the shots and booked Chris Benoit against Bret Hart for the US title on the pay-per-view. Scott Hall came out saying that he deserves the shot instead, leading to a Flair-Hall exchange. Flair booked Benoit vs. Hall for the main event, ending the segment with a brawl. The placement of the segment was interesting, as you would expect the Ric Flair-Scott Hall promo to cross over and open the second hour against Raw. Instead, the segment ended minutes before the top of the hour. Just as Raw was about to start at 9 p.m., WCW put on a Van Hammer vs. Chaos match. If viewers were asking "Where's the catch?", he walked to the ring a minute later. ECW's Sandman wrapped in barbed wire debuted, attacking both wrestlers, cutting a promo on how he was the original King of Extreme, and calling out Bam Bam Bigelow to the ring for a match. Bigelow and Sandman, who was never referred to by his character name, had a hardcore match, with Bigelow going over. With Vince in Texas with Patterson and Briscoe, going to several locations in town to find Austin, Shane was in charge with the corporation, opening the show in a segment typing the Austin-McMahon cage match in 2 weeks, bringing down the cage with a Kane vs. Triple H cage match announced for tonight. As the cage was coming down to the arena, X-Pac was sitting on top, leaving him alone with Shane, continuing the build to their eventual match, ending with a Corporation DX brawl with new corporate member Chyna turning on X-Pac and helping Shane. Scott Steiner continued to harass Dallas Page's wife Kimberly, this time causing her to fall during the Nitro Girls pre-show dance routine. Page, arriving at the building after hearing the news, called out the Wolfpack in their locker room before going to the ring to call out Steiner. The Wolfpack were pulling a rib on Vincent, who then got Disco to do it as they sent him to the ring to tell Page that Steiner accepts the challenge for Super Brawl, and then to slap him, saying that it will be their cue to come out and help him, leaving him alone in the ring to get a diamond cut. Bischoff was falling into the cold water all night, with everyone from wrestlers, referees and office employees taking their shots. The highlight was a segment with Bobby Heenan. Heenan said that he's not gonna throw the ball, instead giving them back to Eric to end it, thinking about the day Eric comes back to his president position in less than 60 days. Just as Heenan was about to give Eric the balls, he slipped and threw him back down to the water in a comedic segment that made the announcers take off their headsets with laughter. During all that, Bischoff constantly told Flair that he's going to have the last laugh by the end of the night. As that was happening in the building, Hollywood Hogan and Hell's Angels Chuck Zito, were shown in the back of a limo, following David Flair's car in Charlotte. WCW peaked for the night with a 4.8 for Steiner's promo and then match with Jericho. After the match, Nash, Luger and Liz came to the ring for a promo, responding to Conan and Mysterio's challenge from earlier in the show to a mask versus hair match. Nash and Luger agreed but instead put Liz's hair on the line in the match. After weeks of D'Lo doing everything Terry asked for due to feeling guilty about her pregnancy accident, including getting him into a match with Bossman tonight, D'Lo and Henry were at Dr. Francois Petit's office, when he revealed to them that Terry was never pregnant. Undertaker, with the darkest character of his career as the cult leader of the Ministry, last wrestled a televised match back in December and was scheduled for a return in a six-man tag against the Brood. In match time, Taker watched as the Ministry were beating down the Brood, giving subtle hints as the Brood refused any help from the officials and took their beating as a sign, ending with Taker walking to the ring and hanging Gangrel. Less than an hour later, the Brood revealed themselves as the new members of the Ministry after passing their test. Rock and Mankind going head-to-head with the Super Bowl halftime show last night, put on one of the most entertaining matches and spectacles in history on a special occasion for the business, with them creatively brawling all over the building with Mankind taking big bumps all over the arena and Rock putting on an all-time great showmanship performance. McMahon, who was on commentary for the match, introduced the WWF product to any potential new viewer on the night who might channel surf to the USA Network, presenting the product as an action-adventure, episodic soap opera with a mix of Hollywood and Broadway, as well as being the #1 show on cable TV. The idea with the empty arena match was a concept that would appeal and attract any viewer due to its unique setting, with two men brawling alone in a big empty building. The match drew an all-time record 6.6 rating, becoming the most watched WWF match ever on cable TV. After spending Rock's money in a series of funny segments including renting a Mini for his kids and giving Kurgan financial advice, Foley came out for the follow-up promo. Rock interrupted, demanding a rematch that will take brutality to another level in a last man standing match for Valentine's Day Massacre. The Mankind Rock segment along with the Ministry Brood match peaked the night with a 6 rating to start Raw's second hour. The Super Bowl commercial created big buzz for the company, with them chosen as one of the best newcomers with a lot of mainstream media coverage for the controversial spot, as McMahon and the company's biggest stars mocked the media criticism in regards to being family entertainment in an iconic commercial filmed at Titan Towers a few weeks earlier. To play off that, an alternate version of the spot was filmed with the wrestlers saying the complete opposite, airing on Raw on the night. In addition to the company selling out the last 30 house shows in a row, days later they sent out a press release on the Royal Rumble '99 pay-per-view outdrawing a Mike Tyson fight, which Cole mentioned on air during the broadcast, with business booming in every aspect. Goldberg was only on the show for a few minutes, cutting a promo on his match with Bigelow in 2 weeks. Al Snow and Road Dogg, who since their memorable match on January 4th were trying to top themselves every week with creative locations and violence all over the building and outside of it, faced the team of Farouk and Bradshaw in another brutal hardcore match going to the streets of Arizona, leading to the Ministry attacking and the reveal of the Brood. McMahon, Patterson and Briscoe were in Victoria, Texas to confront Stone Cold, with him planning to provoke Austin to attack him, and as per the contract, the match will be off and he is fired on the spot. Vince and the Stooges treated Texas like they were in a different planet, as Vince constantly referred to the locals as these weird people, going to a bar, a shop and eating at the local restaurant in a series of entertaining skits. Vince eventually found Austin drinking in a bar, aggressively cursing him, attempting to get him to attack. Austin said that he's going to do it in the cage match in 2 weeks when it's legal, leaving McMahon there with some angry Texans. Scott Hall and Chris Benoit went 11 minutes in the main event, ending with Hall going over and advancing to face Bret for the US title. Kane and Hunter went 12 minutes in a cage, ending with Hunter escaping over the top with X-Pac's help, ending the show with Chyna telling Hunter that she will see him at Valentine's Day in 2 weeks. After the match ended, Hogan and Zito were shown again in the limo, parking outside in Flair's hometown. David Flair was shown entering the gym with Hogan planning an attack when he gets there. Flair and Anderson were watching on the monitor from the building as the show went off the air. With Raw preempted on the USA Network for the week, WCW had an unopposed Monday for the first time since September '98 to let potential Raw viewers sample their product in what is expected to be WCW's highest-rated show in 5 months. With the company's new creative committee headed by Nash having more leeway in the last month to put their stamp on the product, the show saw several new elements the new regime was looking to implement into wrestling television, on a similar vision to the philosophy Vince Russo was pushing in the WWF, with the cameras being everywhere to create more freedom for storyline development. Nitro saw several show-long angles continuing almost throughout the entire 3 hours, with several twists to the camera presentation, including Raven openly acknowledging it and breaking the fourth wall during a skit similar to a sitcom scene. The angles saw Raven calling Kanyon a mark for believing the depressed character he was portraying while taking him shopping, Ric Flair putting Eric Bischoff in charge of facility cleaning, Torrie Wilson debuting on TV attempting to lure a mystery man off camera for the NWO, and Hogan playing the entire NWO B team against each other, telling them that they're all the new leader of the group. One of WCW's biggest events of the year was supposed to take place in 6 days on Sunday, February 14th, with the first NBC special on network television. The show, which would have went head-to-head with the WWF's Valentine's Day Massacre pay-per-view, was set to be a huge opportunity for the company to draw a massive audience in front of the wider national TV viewership, with the company planning to hype it like a major pay-per-view, with the rumored planned main event originally set to be the first Goldberg vs. Hogan rematch since their match in July, along with special attractions like a Dennis Rodman Carmen Electra divorce segment and every major player on the roster appearing on the night. As with Nitro and Raw each drawing over 6 to 7 million viewers on cable TV for a routine Monday night show, the special would have almost guaranteed to reach the largest TV audience for the industry since the WWF Saturday Night Main Event specials in the late 80s to early 90s. The NBC deal ended up delayed due to the NBA unexpectedly returning early from the lockout, and then completely cancelled due to Turner executives wanting WCW exclusivity on their network, in a major blow for the company, going down as one of the biggest missed opportunities of the boom period. Despite Raw not airing on the night, WCW had a similar format of trying to hold or attract additional viewers in the crossover segment at 9 p.m. who might switch between the channels on a regular Monday, with Ric Flair coming out for a promo at 8:55. Flair hyped the match against Hogan at Super Brawl while booking the main event for tonight, with Flair and Mongo taking on Nash and Hall. Flair then called out Bret Hart, forcing him to defend the US title despite Bret still claiming injury, with Flair booking him against the returning Roddy Piper to a massive reaction. as the 9 p.m. quarter now going unopposed saw WCW jumping around 1 million viewers to a peak 6.2 rating, the highest rated quarter of the night. Nitro jumped back into the 6 rating range with Bam Bam Bigelow coming out for a promo to hype his upcoming pay-per-view match with Goldberg. Bigelow brought a recent Goldberg article from USA Today saying that he's not focused on their match, talking about his ECW history, and mocked Goldberg's animal rights story to bring him out to the ring, leading to Goldberg giving him a big shoulder block with the segment jumping over 600,000 viewers to a 6.1 rating. Bill Goldberg, who since losing the streak continued to be perhaps in the top 3 draws in the industry, with him still a massive difference maker on television, was getting big mainstream media opportunities, with one of the biggest being a rumored guest role on ER, the most watched show on television, who during the week drew over 31 million viewers for the recent episode. Along with that, Goldberg's debut movie role in Universal Soldier got a release date for August, with Goldberg also set to be on The Tonight Show on February 19th, with more mainstream opportunities in the works, including a potential lead role in a new weekly action-adventure TV series on Nitro's home of TNT. WCW had one of the most talked about angles of the night next, with Dallas Page attacking Scott Steiner in the parking lot after stalking Kimberly over the last month, ending up in a brawl that saw Steiner driving off and throwing her off the car in a major heat angle for the upcoming Page vs. Steiner pay-per-view match at Super Brawl. Bret Hart vs. Roddy Piper in only their second singles match in history, for the rematch of their memorable match 7 years earlier at WrestleMania 8, went 13 minutes, maintaining a 6 rating, with Piper making his in-ring return for the first time since September in a rare TV match booked on the night. Bret Hart, who appeared on sketch comedy show Mad TV on Saturday and shot an angle with actor Will Sasso during a skit of him protecting Governor Jesse Ventura from reporters while then turning on Sasso and putting him in the sharpshooter, continued the angle on the night, with Sasso sitting front row throughout the show, being involved in the match, with him distracting Bret to lead to Piper winning the U.S. title to a huge pop for the finish. The Outsiders came out for the main event with Disco after an angle of them laying out Arn Anderson for him over 2 hours earlier, with another new idea in the formatting of the show is to have backstage skits taking place during matches to hold viewers from switching channels, with a more storyline-based product that saw the WWF going ahead with record numbers, with Nash reportedly informing the crew to be in the buildings in time as more pre-taped skits will be shot for the shows. With Raw airing on Saturday, Nitro, which came in front of a sellout 15,000 in Buffalo, New York, saw its competition on the night in the Westminster Dog Show that replaced it and only a year ago drew similar numbers to Raw, drawing a 3.5 rating, nowhere near the number of either wrestling show for a regular broadcast on Monday night, with the industry exploding over the last 12 months. Hall and Nash vs. Flair and Mongo went 11 minutes in the main event, jumping over 1.1 million viewers in the overrun to a peak 6.5 rating, ending up with Hogan coming out for the first time on the night, with Goldberg running in for the save to close the show, as WCW drew a 5.7 rating, its highest rating since August '98, which was also the second highest rated Nitro in show history, with all 3 hours ending up the 3 most watched hours of the week on cable television. In front of the largest crowd in wrestling TV history, the spectacle of Raw started before any performer came out, with over 42,000 people packing the Toronto Skydome with a sea of signs all over the stadium to start the show in one of the memorable shots of the Attitude Era boom period. Raw, which aired in Canada on TSN in its usual Monday night time slot, was preempted on the USA Network and aired on Saturday in a special 8 p.m. start, with the company starting a major 3-day block between Raw on Saturday to Heat and the Valentine's Day Massacre pay-per-view on Sunday to Monday's Raw the following night. Steve Austin opened the show to a huge reaction, hyping the Austin-McMahon cage match tomorrow night, setting the stage for a violent match guaranteeing McMahon's blood during it. Mankind was out next, with Vince booking Austin vs. Mankind for the main event tonight. Foley said that after he beats Rock on Sunday, the WrestleMania 15 main event will be Foley vs. Austin to bring out the entire corporation. Rock hyped the last man standing match, saying that he's gonna finish Mankind and go to WrestleMania, before turning to Austin telling Vinnie Mac to set him straight. McMahon responded to Austin's guarantee, saying that not one corporation member is allowed to interfere during the cage match, closing the segment guaranteeing that from Sunday the WWF will never be the same again for Austin to set the stage for a major debut. With WWF Creative reinventing wrestling television in the last year with the way the shows are shot, written and formatted unlike anything seen before in the industry, one of the main influencers behind the change that oversaw and pushed for the transition in head writer Vince Russo, reacted in an article on the WWF magazine during the week regarding the way the cameras shoot outside the ring segments and skits, with the idea that the cameras are everywhere at any time to expand the creative envelope. Russo said that he's glad to see the evolution of the business, with the shows expanding the view of the camera beyond the arena, telling anyone in the company who still don't get it to adapt to the times or take their old wrestling down south and jump on their sinking ship. WCW, meanwhile, under the new creative regime, took major steps in going in a similar format to Russo's philosophy, with this week's Nitro featuring more out-of-the-ring skits than never before. The X came out for a promo to close out Raw's first hour, each hyping their feuds, with Hunter cutting a promo on China and X-Pac hyping his Kane match later tonight before calling out Shane McMahon, saying that if he can steal a line from a good friend of his, referring to Scott Hall, telling Shane to not sing it but bring it. Road Dogg popped the crowd with the Outlaws catchphrase before Billy Gunn announced himself as the special referee in the Shamrock vs. Vinny's pay-per-view match on Sunday. Raw jumped big in the second hour, starting at its normal start time at 9 p.m., growing rapidly into a 4.8 rating for the hour overall, almost approaching the level of Raw's routine Monday numbers, with viewers catching on as the show progressed. Vince McMahon came out for the promoted Austin vs. Mankind match set for the top of the hour, with Vince encouraging them to beat each other a day before their pay-per-view matches with Rock and McMahon, ending up with both turning on Vince and clearing the ring from the corporation, with Vince booking the replacement match for the main event, with Austin facing each member of the corporation outside of Rock in a gauntlet match. Raw's next 30 minutes saw Godfather vs. Ministries Viscera, and Val Venis Shamrock and Billy Gunn continuing the Triangle program in a backstage brawl, coming after an earlier segment at the Skydome Skybox where Val was seen with Shamrock's sister. followed that was Kane vs X-Pac, going 3 minutes with interferences from Triple H in China. With the WWF all over TV in Canada in the lead-up to the show, one of the most talked about appearances saw China and Sable shooting on each other on a TSN talk show, going back and forth with both bringing up steroid use and cosmetic surgeries. With the Road Dogg vs Al Snow Hardcore title rematch from January 4th set for the upcoming pay-per-view, last Sunday a house show in the Garden forced changes as Road Dogg, who teamed up with X-Pac and Billy Gunn against Taker and the Acolytes in a 6-man tag match at the event, took a bad bump out of the ring on his neck with his arm temporarily going numb and saw him taken out on a stretcher to a New York hospital for the night. Reacting to that the next night in the Raw tapings, Al Snow came out to shoot an angle for his replacement opponent, calling out Road Dogg to the ring before deciding to wrestle in hardcore match against himself, bringing out Bob Holly to set up the Snow vs Holly pay-per-view match. Raw loaded up the final quarter with the two top matches saved for the final 15 minutes, as Rock vs Blackman started at 9:45 p.m. with Rock coming out to a massive babyface ovation from the crowd. One of Rock's highest-profile mainstream appearances to date came a few days earlier on sitcom The 70s Show on Fox, as besides the appearance which also included Shamrock and the Hardys, Rock coming 2 weeks after breaking viewership records for the Halftime Heat special against Mankind, showed crossover impact as the 70s Show episode drew a record 8.5 rating with over 13 million viewers, the highest rated and most watched episode in show history. Rock and Blackman went 4 minutes with Rock going over in the final build to the last man standing match with Mankind coming up tomorrow. The Corporation and Austin came out at around 9:50 for the main event, with Austin running through every member of the group to set up the next one attacking for the DQ, with the match not ending until a pinfall victory. Raw drawing a 4.3 rating despite airing on Saturday and starting an hour earlier at 8 p.m., still held 2 of the top 7 most watched hours of the week on cable television, with WCW on Monday taking the entire top 3 and Heat on Sunday placed at the 4th spot, all significantly outdrawing Monday's Westminster Dog Show, which did a 3.5. After going 7 minutes in the gauntlet match, Bossman KO'd Austin with the nightstick to bring in McMahon to pin him and win the match, closing the show in a heated exchange heading into Sunday for the first ever Austin vs McMahon match. With the WWF putting on a memorable pay-per-view last night with big anticipation for the follow-up heading into WrestleMania, WCW 6 days from the Super Brawl pay-per-view also had a loaded card for the event, with almost every available top star in the company involved in high-profile feuds. Goldberg, who was off the show tonight and is set for a match with Bam Bam Bigelow on Sunday, continued to make mainstream appearances after taking over from Hogan as the company's lead representative, with another high-profile appearance set for The Tonight Show on Friday. After being attacked by Hall, Nash and Disco last week, Arn Anderson chased Disco outside the building and was taken out by security, setting the stage for the big angle coming up with Ric Flair on the way to the arena, with the rest of the first hour featuring 2 matches of Saturn vs. Flynn, and a 6-man tag match going 18 minutes over 2 quarters. After setting it up in the first 45 minutes, WCW's biggest angle of the night came in the final quarter of the first hour, as Bischoff was driving Flair's limousine to the middle of a field with the NWO following them with Hummers and helicopter shots to the location. Flair got out of the limo to find out Hogan and Nash near the door, starting a brawl that ended in a brutal beatdown to leave Flair laying. The high-production skit as the go-home angle for the Super Brawl pay-per-view drew a show high 5 rating in the unopposed quarter, but with the announcers booked not to see anything that goes outside the building, the segment wasn't acknowledged again for the rest of the program. The NWO Flair scene crossed over 9 p.m. for the final 3 minutes, with the first opposed quarter featuring the first half of a 15-minute tag titles tournament match between Benoit and Malenko Finlay and Taylor. A day after one of the biggest beat pay-per-views in company history that saw the first ever Austin vs. McMahon singles match with the debut of Paul White and the pay-per-view blow-off of the Rock Mankind program, the WWF started the road to WrestleMania 15 with Shawn Michaels making his Raw return to open the show with him calling out Austin and Mankind as the WrestleMania headliners. As Michaels was about to announce the Foley vs. Austin WWF title main event, Vince McMahon came out to major heat in a neck brace a day after taking a crazy bump off the top of the cage while landing on the stiff side of the announcer's table. Vince said that after last night he's a broken man and wants to bury the hatchet, before demanding Michaels to book a Rock Mankind rematch as Foley didn't win the match last night. Rock came out talking about the feud with Mankind over the past 5 months, telling Michaels to book the match for tonight, as McMahon suggested Michaels to book his kind of match with the final payoff of Rock vs. Mankind in a ladder match, before introducing new big money signing Paul White as the corporation's new enforcer, with Raw opening huge with a 5.9 rating, the joint highest rated opening segment in history, while the continuation of the 19-minute segment in the second quarter, jumping further to a joint all-time record 6.4 rating. While the uncertainty over the WrestleMania main event was going on in the TV storylines, a similar angle was also legitimately happening behind the scenes as far as the day of the show tonight at the Civic Coliseum in Birmingham, Alabama. With the headline match of Austin vs. Rock set over 5 months in advance, recent storylines brought the suggestion of perhaps changing the Rock-Austin singles match into a 3-way with Mankind. Head writer Vince Russo, who pushed for the change, was setting up the TV angles to lead to the Triangle feud, before getting the word from McMahon that the match is back to a Rock-Austin singles match. Shawn Michaels, who just made his TV return last night after over 2 months, reportedly tried to influence the decision by suggesting to McMahon and Austin that the match should always be one-on-one in the Mania main event, leading to a furious Russo who had to tell Foley that he's out of the biggest match in his career, confronting Triple H backstage about Michaels stirring things up and interfering with the plans, while minutes later when he got the word of the conversation, Shawn went to Russo and reportedly threatened him to the point of him almost getting into a physical confrontation. While Russo wanted to keep Foley in the main event and Michaels pushed for a singles match, Michaels actually didn't suggest taking Foley out of the match, pushing for a Foley vs. Austin main event with Rock being left out, leading to major heat between Rock and Michaels that continued for years to come. While Raw was reaching peak viewership with The Gap during the last 30 minutes, growing to one of the biggest margins in history with the Big Star Power promo segment and following match. WCW's long tag match with 2 commercial breaks in the middle saw the show plummet to a 3 rating in one of the lowest quarters in years. Nitro's first boost of the night came between 9:45 to 10 p.m. with Bret Hart facing Mad TV host Will Sasso in a crossover match after building it in the last several weeks on both programs, rebounding over 500,000 viewers to a 3.4 rating, along with the NWO arriving to the building with the Hummers and going straight to the ring. At the same time, Raw stayed in the 6 rating range, having the end of Val vs. Billy Gunn with Val turning on Ryan, and Undertaker and the Ministry coming out for a promo. Taker and Bearer sent a message to Vince McMahon saying that they're gonna take over the company, hinting at something that McMahon and his corporation can't overcome while referring to a greater power for the first time, bringing out Bossman to start the build to the Taker vs. Bossman WrestleMania match. With the NWO arriving and leaving Hogan alone in the ring for a promo, Hogan hyped his pay-per-view match with Flair before saying that he's not waiting for Super Brawl in San Francisco, but instead will take him out tonight in his hometown of Tampa, Florida, calling him to the ring knowing that Flair is laying in the field while instead getting Roddy Piper coming out. Piper said that he knows what they did to Flair, acknowledging the segment for the first time since it happened, and since he's the acting commissioner they're gonna wrestle for the title right now, starting an impromptu Hogan vs. Piper title match going 6 minutes, with the NWO's arrival and the Piper-Hogan match leading to a massive swing of viewers as WCW jumped huge with over 1.8 million viewers from a 3.4 to 5 rating, while Raw dropped from a 6.1 to 5.1 at the same time. With Piper looking to have the match won with the sleeper, Scott Hall returned to the ring with the taser to take out Piper for the finish, building up to the Hall vs. Piper US title match in 6 days. Raw's top-of-the-hour quarter saw Shane and Kane vs. Triple H and X-Pac tag match with the European title on the line, going head-to-head with the Hogan vs. Piper match to lead to by far the closest margin of the night between the shows, as while Raw held over a 2 rating point margin for the entire night, the NWO's arrival with Hogan vs. Piper brought Nitro neck and neck with a 5 to 5.1 rating gap. Chyna, after wrestling her first pay-per-view match last night, gave Shane the belt to hit X-Pac for the finish to win the title. After already having 2 tag matches on the night going 18 and 15 minutes, WCW had the second round of the Tag Titles tournament in another long tag match going 17 minutes, dropping back from a 5 rating range to a 3.2, not helped by the competition as Raw jumped big at the same time having a Bob Holly vs. Blackman hardcore match all over the building, a day after Holly and Al Snow had one of the wildest hardcore matches in history that ended up in a river, featuring the return of Bard Gunn for the first time since winning the Brawl for All tournament, confronting his former tag partner with Holly using Shoot as work, saying that he was the only one Bard couldn't knock out to set up a hardcore match between them next week. Minutes later, Sable made her TV return after being on a media tour over the last month promoting the release of her Playboy cover in March, cutting a promo promoting all her mainstream appearances until eventually turning heel on the crowd, with the quarter jumping over 1.1 million viewers to a 6.1 rating. with wrestling television almost doubling its viewership from the start of '98 to the end of it. A listing during the week of the top 100 shows on cable TV during the year 1998 showed wrestling's dominance, with 32 hours of the 100 being WCW or WWF programs, with WCW holding 17 to WWF's 15, with Nitro's second hour between 9 to 10 p.m. on August 31st placing the highest with a 6.6 rating. Raw had a Corporation vs. Ministry tag match next, with Taker sending a message to Vince through Shane, while Rock made his entrance for the main event earlier than usual at 10:40 p.m., cutting a pre-match heat promo on the crowd Mankind and Austin. After a final quarter filled with recaps, commercial breaks and pay-per-view hype video packages, the NWO were back out for the main event a few minutes from the top of the hour for the show closing angle, interrupting the Michael Buffer introduction and sending him out of the ring while calling out Ric Flair again. Meanwhile, Mankind and Steve Austin for commentary made their entrances on Raw, with Rock and Mankind putting on another pay-per-view main event caliber match on TV a day after a last man standing match on the pay-per-view, closing out their game-changing program that saw record crowds and viewership, going 13 minutes in the main event ladder match, with the gap between the shows during the quarter which saw the first half of Rock vs. Mankind against a commercial-heavy quarter, along with the start of the NWO promo, again approaching record levels with a 3 to 5.9 rating. WCW in 3 minutes in the overrun for the Super Brawl Go Home segment, with Ric Flair arriving to the building, barely limping to the ring before being taken out by the NWO along with the rest of the Horsemen, with Nitro again jumping big for the NWO Flair segment, picking up over 1.6 million viewers to a 4.5 rating, showing strong interest in the main event program, drawing between 4.5 to 5 rating for its 3 quarters. But with a massive gap to the rest of the show format, which featured 3 long tag matches with no build-up, hovering around the low 3s in a unique viewing pattern rarely seen before. The Rock vs. Mankind ladder match saw Raw jumping big with over 1.1 million viewers to a peak 6.8 rating, ending up with Paul White interfering for the finish and Rock winning the WWF title back to officially set up the Rock vs. Austin WrestleMania 15 main event. The WWF on its hottest run in history, heading into what is expected to break every pay-per-view record on March 28, started the build-up with Raw drawing an all-time record 5.9 rating, breaking the record set on January 4 to become the highest-rated show in Monday Night Wars history.
Woo! By God! Woo!
After weeks of hints with the Torrie Wilson skits, the person was revealed to be David Flair, turning on Rick and costing him the match at last night's Super Brawl pay-per-view. The story was Hogan and Nash sent Wilson to lure him into the group and cause him to turn on his father, promising to get him out of his dad's shadow in the NWO. WCW opened the show hyping the first Trick and David face-to-face confrontation since last night, planned for later in the show. The first hour featured a funny Steiner and Bagwell video segment, driving over town with their tour bus, going to the gym before ending up in a drag club. Steiner, who was now one of the top performers on the show every week for some time, interrupted Goldberg's photo shoot, teasing a future confrontation between them. After their match showed a big gain a few weeks ago, Bret Hart and Booker T were set for a rematch for the #1 contender for Scott Hall's U.S. title, placed as the crossover segment 10 minutes before the top of the hour. Mid-match, the cameras showed Disco in the production truck, who were preparing the feed for the Flair segment later in the show. Disco told the producer that the NWO are going to pirate the satellite signal in around 2 hours at 10:50, threatening him to get it done for them and he will triple his payday. The Bret Booker match continued, going 17 minutes with Booker going over to face Hall for the belt. With The Rock hosting WrestleMania main event officially set, the company got another big addition to the already all-time great top of the card. Paul White, signing one of the biggest guaranteed contracts of all time, was targeted to become the corporation's This Generation Andre the Giant. McMahon opened draw introducing White, with White saying that he single-handedly won Rock the match and got the title back to the corporation. That brought out Rock to the ring for the first Rock Giant interaction. In a few minutes of a great confrontation, the crowd was already popping big for the eventual clash between them, with Vince trying to calm them down. Mankind came out to suggest them wrestling tonight for the title. White then challenged Rock and the match was set, leading to Vince trying to talk them out of it separately in the next hour. In an interesting story, 3 days ago during an appearance on The Tonight Show, Goldberg challenged Steve Austin to a match. On the morning of the show, Austin was on Howard Stern, saying that he will wrestle Goldberg if he comes to the big leagues. On the WCW broadcast, Tony Schiavone took a shot by saying that some talk the talk but can't walk the walk. Another show-long angle saw members of the Black and White claiming that Hogan put them in charge, as well as the Ministry punishing the Brood outside the building after losing a match. Steiner and Bagwell came out, with Steiner cutting another strong promo on Dallas Page and Kimberly a day after beating Page at Super Brawl. With his unique combination of believability and aggressive comedic promos, it was clear by the increasing weekly reactions that a noticeable percentage of the crowd was starting to cheer him to go along with the usual heel heat. After he was done with Page and the Wolfpack music started, Steiner told them to cut it off as he wasn't done, going on to challenge Goldberg to a big match for tonight, which was made official minutes later. Sable, with her Playboy cover scheduled to come out in a few weeks, was now at the peak of her popularity as one of the top viewership gainers in the business, continuing the stalker angle, calling Tori to the ring. The Wolfpack of Nash and Luger opened Nitro's second hour, with Luger suffering a bicep injury. Scott Hall took his place in the match last night. After Mysterio and Conan were close to winning the match, Hall interfered, helping Nash win, resulting in Ray taking off his mask for the first time in his career, going against usual tradition with the idea of marketing and rebranding with a new look and character. Mysterio came out for his first appearance without the mask, challenging Nash to a match right now. Nash sarcastically agreed with the size difference between them, one of the biggest in history. When it looked to be one-sided, Ray exploded from the start with a series of moves taking Nash down, with the crowd popping big for every Mysterio offense. Nash made a comeback and looking to end it with the jackknife, when Ray rolled up to cover him, with the crowd erupting for the surprising clean win, built as one of the biggest upsets in history, with Nash selling the loss big with a shocking reaction. After Vince could not convince them to drop it, Rock and White came out for the match, with the Inferno match set for the main event. It seemed unlikely to give away a potential first ever big money match like that in mid-show. Rock told Vince to sit at the commentary table. A few seconds later it was clear as Rock and White turned on Mankind and joined forces, with McMahon revealing it was the plan all along to work Foley in the crowd. McMahon, Rock and White left the ring smiling to close this segment with the corporation united. But the subtle teases to the storyline that will become the focal point of the WrestleMania main event build-up, with Rock's paranoia with White double-crossing them, were already planted, with Rock jokingly asking him why he shoved him so hard and White telling him not to worry about it. Goldberg vs. Steiner was next, going against another wild hardcore match on Raw. With the way both were going, it seemed like a matter of time before this match headlines a big pay-per-view. Goldberg started with a highly impressive overhead press of the 280-plus Steiner, which came seconds before taking a commercial break which seemed out of place during a match of this level. After Bagwell interfered for the DQ, Rick Steiner made his return from injury to join Goldberg against Scott and Bagwell. Nitro peaked with two 4.9 ratings for Nash vs. Mysterio and Goldberg vs. Steiner. Tony was in the room ready for the Rick and David confrontation, with Hogan and Nash watching on another monitor. Disco was back at the production truck with the satellite feed takeover about to start. With a shot of Flair's limousine arriving, the feed changed to a video of David and Tori. Still not sure what was happening, Disco entered the frame as Mean Gene, with Nash bringing back the Anderson character, Hall as Piper, and finally Hogan as Flair, in one of the funniest parodies in the business. Disco, playing a great Gene, went around interviewing the group, going to Nash with the Arn's impersonation from their segment in September '97, which led at the time to legit heat between the groups, Hall with Piper talking about how they ruined tradition, and Hogan doing a comedy Ric Flair, taking off his clothes while taking personal shots at Flair and the Horsemen, while Nash acting like looking at him in awe. Shane vs. X-Pac was officially set for Mania after he pinned Chyna to get the match. Vince was on commentary for the first ever Inferno match in Raw and Wrestling TV history. Going unopposed for around 2 minutes, with Nitro not having the usual overrun this week, ending less than 2 minutes after 11, the Inferno match gained over 1 million viewers. McMahon sent out Kane to burn Taker after threatening him in the previous weeks. While the match was going on, Paul Bearer gave McMahon a box. Vince opened it in shock to find out a teddy bear. Taker catched a high kick from Kane and set his foot on fire to win the match, with Vince repeatedly asking Bearer why. Taker set the bear on fire in front of him to close the show in a cliffhanger for next week.